Hey guys, what's up? It's Shelby and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing another Mystery Monday. Even though this one isn't a mystery, it is a solved case. But yeah, this is about the Central Park 5, seeing it is Black History Month, and I wanted to raise some awareness about it. So yeah, let's just get right into this video. So if you don't know what the Central Park 5 is, it was a pretty much a white versus black trial, which is awful. It was about 5 black and Hispanic kids up against a white female, and they had a white judge and a white jury, and they were all charged for something that they didn't do based on their skin color. So in spring of 1989, a group of about 30 some kids, teenagers, they were, anywhere from 13 to 17. There was just a whole range of kids. They were just running the streets in Central Park. They were said to have been harassing and assaulting homeless people. They just were going wild this night. The same night in the same park, Trisha Miley, I think is how you say her name, she was jogging that night when she was approached by a man and ultimately sexually assaulted and beaten pretty bad. When she was found, she was in a coma for about 12 days, and she lost scent, and she didn't remember anything that had happened that night at all. Alrighty, so let's talk about the 5. We have Kevin Richards, who was 14, Raymond Santana, who was also 14, Antron McGray, who was 15, Yusuf Salam, who was also 15, and Corey Wise, who was 16. That next morning, Kevin and Raymond were actually taken in to be interrogated about, they were reported to have had intimidating behavior and a mugging that had happened. So they were taken in for that, and this was before she had even been found. And then I believe that they actually got to go home after this interrogation before she was found, but they did admit to being in Central Park, at this time and everything, but they were never convicted, of this mugging or anything. I don't think. I'm not sure if they were still in the interrogation room or not when they found Trisha and stuff, but I do know that they, did admit to being in Central Park at this time. Once she was found, the next day, Antron, Yusuf, and Corey were all brought in for interrogation as well. Corey actually was not a suspect at this time. He just went in with Yusuf to kind of be his support and stuff. He wouldn't go without him. So these boys were taken into interrogation. They were all in separate rooms, and not one of their parents were contacted during this time. They were in there for 7 hours straight. There was no food, no water, no drinks, no nothing. They were not allowed to talk to each other. They all just sat in this interrogation room for 7+ hours. I also saw on another website that it was a course of 24 hours, so I'm not exactly sure. I know 7 hours is when that they ultimately made the confession tapes, but I'm sure that they were in custody for more than 7 hours. Even after making these tapes, they weren't just released. So like I said, they did make confession tapes. 4 out of the 5 of them made confession tapes. Corey was not even a suspect in this, but the police did take him into an interrogation type room and beat the crap out of him until he would admit that he watched these 4 boys rape and assault Trisha. There is a fly. Corey got most of the beatings. Sadly, he really did take a big part in most of the assault that happened between the cops and stuff, which is awful. I feel so bad watching When They See Us. That part was when it got me. I felt so bad because I know this is all true. I know it's just a movie, but it really happened, so it's awful. So the 3 boys that confessed, they confessed to assaulting her. They all admitted to touching her. They all admitted to beating her and holding her down while somebody else would, touch her. That's what they all ultimately confessed to. In 2016, Yusuf Salam actually came out and spoke about, some of the stuff that had happened during interrogation. I'm going to read a quote that he said, so I'm going to be looking down so I read it off to you guys. He said, and I quote, "I would hear them beating up Corey in the next room. They would come back and look at me and say, 'You realize you're next?' The fear made me feel really like I was not going to be able to make it out." DNA evidence was found on Trisha, and when they ran it through, it did not match not a single one of the boys that was in custody right now for this assault. They really didn't bring that up in court at all. From what I saw, they pretty much just focused on the fact that they admitted to it, and the whole interrogation thing in the tapes is really what they solely aimed in on, instead of actually trying to look at this evidence. I know in the movie, I didn't see anything about it online, but I know in the movie they actually brought Trisha in, and she admitted to seeing, she was like, "Yeah, those are the boys that did it to me." But if you recall, I said Trisha didn't remember a thing from what had happened to her at this during this assault. She does not remember anything of it. She just knows that what happened, but she does not remember any specifics about it. But she was in the movie, like I said, I'm not exactly sure, but in the movie she was brought in and admitted that these are the 5 boys that I saw. But it definitely was not true. She, obviously got paid for it. I didn't see, like I said, I didn't see that in the articles, the 2 articles that I read, but it was in the movie, so I'm not sure if that was just for dramatic effect or if it actually did happen. All 5 of the boys took back their confessions, once the cops calmed down on them for, actually admitting to it, they took it back right away. They took it back and said that they were coerced into it, that they, were forced to say these things so, the beatings would stop, and they were ultimately promised a less harsh sentence if they did admit to this. And like I said, Corey was promised not to even be trialed at all if he admitted to it, but he was still part of the trial, and he still did get sentenced. 2 trials later, the boys were all sentenced to murder, rape, assault, and robbery. I'm not exactly sure where they get robbery and murder from, because Trisha did survive. She was alive. She still is alive, and I don't know where they got robbery from. I think that might just be the mugging part of, of Kevin and Santana's, when they first got in. I think that's just their part. They were sentenced to 15 years in prison, and the only way that they could get parole is if they pled guilty, which they all would not admit to. Not one of them would admit that they were guilty all through this whole thing. They all pled not guilty. So let's go ahead and talk about somebody that we haven't mentioned yet. Matthias Reyes. He went to prison around the same time that the Central Park 5 boys did. He was convicted of a string of rape and murders that had happened in this area. He actually was convicted of a rape that had happened just 2 days before Trisha's, and he was never looked at as a suspect at all in her case. It was strictly just these 5 boys. They didn't look at any other leads. They didn't look at anything else. They went in on these 5 boys and just decided, yep, you guys are taking the blame for this one. So Reyes was actually in the same prison that Corey was. He was in the same prison, so he, encountered him. He actually talked to him a couple times, about 2-3 times. And the second time that he talked to him, he was starting to feel really bad because he knew that he was the one that did this, and he realized, wow, these boys are in here for something that I did, and ultimately confessed to the police that I did this, that this was, I did this. He had known stuff about this case that was never released to the public. He knew specifics and stuff, and his DNA matched with the DNA that was found on Trisha. Reyes was never actually convicted of doing this because of statute of limitations, so he was never convicted for her rape and assault, because like I said, statute of limitations, you know, this was almost to the point where where the boys were getting ready to get out. I mean, they spent their whole life there before this ever happened. Reyes is actually still in prison, and he will be in prison for a while. He has a parole hearing in 2022, but yeah. All the men were released and cleared of their charges, and they were, you know, just thrown back out into New York City after have spent all this time in prison. I mean, they went in there 14, 15, and 16. They were in there for I think like 12 years. By the time they got out, they were in their 20s, almost 30s. So it was like they had already spent their whole life pretty much in prison. They didn't know what to do when they got out. They really had a hard time getting a job. They had a hard time getting a family, getting a house, getting their life together. It was a rough patch for them, you know, to get back into society, especially after being convicted so young. Like, that age between 14 and 20 is drastic. I mean, in that time you graduate from high school, you're going to college, you're meeting people, you're partying, you're exploring, you know, the world, you're learning about yourself, and they never got to do this. They went into prison at 14, 15, and 16, and that's when they had to grow up. I mean, they were, you know, pretty much had to be adults at this point, and there was nothing that they could do about it, which is so awful. All 5 of them did reunite when they got out of prison, and they filed a lawsuit against New York City. They filed a civil lawsuit. They got $41 million back. Corey got $12 million out of this. He got the most out of all 5 because he was 16 and tried as an adult, so he spent the most time in prison. Like I said, the boys, they spent about 5-6 years in a detention center before actually going to prison, but Corey was sent straight to prison. And I'm pretty sure that only 2 of the boys were kept in the same, you know, correctional facility for a while, but I know Yusuf was moved super far away from his family. I mean, they were just, like, completely just, like, looked at like trash pretty much. I mean, they were moving them to facilities so far away from their family for no reason at all. They were just, it was just so awful, to be honest. They are now all in their 40s, and most of them have moved away from New York City. Yusuf is now married and has kids. It didn't really say where he moved to, but I know he doesn't live in New York City anymore. But he does have a wife and kids. I think he's a doctor, but I'm not sure. I saw a couple things that, you know, said that he was a doctor, but I'm not 100% on that fact. He speaks out a lot about what had happened. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award from President Barack Obama. Corey still lives in New York City. He works with the Innocence Project and advocates for the rights of the wrongly convicted, as well as working towards criminal justice reform. Kevin as well still lives in New York City. He works for the Innocence Project and also advocates for the rights of people who were wrongly convicted. Raymond lives in Atlanta with his daughter, and he actually started this clothing line. I'm not sure if it was him that started it or he just helped in it, but it was called Park Madison, New York City. He had made a shirt specifically to give profit to the Innocence Project. It had the names of all 5 boys on it, and a portion of the profit was given to the Innocence Project. There is not much about Antron, but we do know he lives somewhere in the South and he's raising his kids, and in 2012 it was said that he is working as a forklift operator. One other thing I want to talk about, not to get political or anything, but it is Donald Trump. So during this time, Donald Trump did live in New York City, and while this was happening, Donald Trump paid for full page ads in 4 major news articles, saying, you know, stuff about them, that, you know, that they were convicted of it and that they should bring back the death penalty and kill these boys and all this stuff, which is just so sad to think about. A lot of them definitely don't, you know, really support him. I just think that is really sad, seeing that he is our president in 2020, and during this time, you know, he was, you know, advocating for the fact that these boys, these 5 Hispanic and Black boys, were being wrongly convicted and wrongly treated, and he just published all this stuff for him. I do remember reading a quote that from Donald Trump that said, "They're guilty. I mean, they admitted to it, and the police were just doing their job," which is awful, because that is not the police's job to target people of color and people of different ethnicities and coerce them and beat the shit out of them and starve them and deprive them of seeing their parents and get them so mentally messed up that they don't want to take it anymore. So they say, fine, I will do whatever the hell that you want if this just stops. That is not the police's job. The police's job is to go to the crime scene and investigate, take DNA, take all this evidence in, put it together, and figure out suspects, run this DNA, and actually find out who this DNA belonged to, instead of saying, oh well, and just putting it on the back shelf and pretending like it never even happened. That is not how the police are supposed to work. I really hope that the police in this investigation went to jail, because that is awful. I'm not sure what happened to them and the prosecutor, the girl that did it. I saw her in a lot of articles, but I didn't really read up on it that much, because I could really care less. I really hope she's rotting in prison as well. Corey is also famous for, well, not famous, but he is known for, once they got convicted, he had yelled out that, God is going to get back at you, and this is not what happened, or something like that, which is very true. I really hope, you know, that those people in this situation that targeted these boys for the color of their skin are living in hell for giving these boys hell for doing absolutely nothing at all. I see, you know, if Kevin and Raymond had got convicted of this mugging and like intimidating behavior, if they had gotten a couple months in the detention center, maybe even a year, yeah, okay. But to go from a mugging to convicting them of murder, assault, rape, and robbery is so far of a stretch that it just blows my mind, and this whole case just makes me sick, to be honest. Like I said, that movie, watching it messed me up for literally 2 weeks. Like, it was all I could think about, and every time I thought about it, it just made me sick, and I wanted to cry. I felt so bad for these kids, because I am 18. Like, if I was them, I would still have been in prison at 18. Like, looking at all the stuff that I have, everything that I've done from 14 to 18 is, like, so much of what that they didn't get to do. And that just makes me so sad, because I would hate to not have done the things that I've done in those years, and to not have gone out and explored and hung out with friends and went to the lake and went camping and hung out with my family. Like, they were taken away from their parents for 12 years, and all they could do is, you know, sit and talk to them once a week. That would drive me crazy. I literally don't know what I would do if I couldn't talk to my parents every single day, because I do. I text my mom every day. I live with my dad. I talk to him every day. Even when I move out, I'm gonna talk to him every day. So it's just, I can't even imagine the pain that these boys went through, the depression, just everything that these boys went through. It really hurts my heart to even think about. But that's enough rambling about it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Next week I'm also going to do a wrongly, or, you know, Black targeted case as well. I think I have 2 more weeks left. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you guys want to see next down below. Don't forget to follow my social medias. They are all linked down below as well. I post on Mondays and Thursdays at 1:30 Central Time, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!